Welcome back to the channel. Before we begin tonight's chilling story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new horror tale. And I have a question for you. What city are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read your comments with great excitement, and I love seeing where everyone is watching from around the world. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin tonight's terrifying story. The first time I realized Mr. Harlan knew my schedule better than my own family did, he was standing beside his mailbox with no mail in his hands. I was 17 then, in my last year of school, and my mornings were always rushed in the same boring way. I would leave the house at 7:18 if I wanted to catch the earlier bus, or 7:26 if I was willing to jog a little. My dad had already gone to work by then, and my mom was usually in the kitchen packing lunch for my younger brother. I would step onto the porch, realize I had forgotten something, go back in, come out again annoyed, and head down the driveway. Across the street, Mr. Harlan would be there. He was in his late 60s, maybe early 70s. He lived alone in a tidy brick house with 2 stone planters by the front steps and a small flag near the door that changed with every holiday. He always dressed like he had somewhere to go, even when he was just watering the grass. Pressed pants, belt, tucked shirt, clean shoes. At first, I thought that was just how older people were. He would smile and lift 2 fingers in a little wave. "Morning," he'd say. I'd say it back because that's what you do when someone is being polite. None of it felt strange in the beginning. Our street was quiet, and people noticed each other. Mrs. Lacey on the corner knew which bins belonged to which house. The couple with the twins always walked their dog at 6:30. My mom said Mr. Harlan was probably lonely after his wife died. She had been gone before we moved in, but everybody talked about her like she had just stepped inside for a minute. The first comment that bothered me happened on a Tuesday in October. I was dragging the trash bin to the curb after dinner when Mr. Harlan called from his driveway. "Long day yesterday?" I looked over, confused. "What? You got home late," he said. "I saw the porch light come on after 10. He said it like a joke, like a neighbor noticing you left your car windows open. I had come home late the night before because I was helping decorate the gym for a school event. It wasn't secret. It also wasn't something I expected a man across the street to remember. I laughed in that fake way you laugh when you don't know what else to do. "Yeah, kind of." He nodded. "School keeps you busy." I went back inside and told my mom. She barely looked up from rinsing dishes. "He probably happened to see you come in. Don't make it weird." So I tried not to. But after that, I noticed him more. He was outside when I left for school. Outside when I came home. Outside when I took out the trash. Outside when my mom pulled into the driveway with groceries. Sometimes he pretended to be working in the yard, but there was nothing to work on. He would hold the hose over the same patch of grass. He would sweep the walkway when there were no leaves. He would stand by the garage with the door halfway open, looking across the street. Then the comments got more specific. "Studying late again?" he asked one morning. I had been awake until almost 2 finishing an assignment. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, front side of the house. I used a desk lamp, not the ceiling light, and I had closed my curtains halfway because one panel had come loose from the rod. At the time, I remember thinking he must have just seen light through the gap. Another day, when I came home carrying a pharmacy bag, he said, "Feeling better?" I had stayed home sick the day before. Nobody outside the house knew that. I asked my mom if she had mentioned it to him, and she said she hadn't spoken to him in weeks. My dad took it less seriously. "He's retired," he said. "Retired people notice stuff. You'll understand one day when your life is that quiet." I wanted to believe that. I really did. There was something embarrassing about being scared of a lonely old man. It made me feel dramatic, so I stopped bringing it up every time something happened. That was probably my mistake. In November, I started staying after school for a college prep group. I would get home after dark twice a week. One evening, as I walked up our driveway, Mr. Harlan opened his front door before I even reached the porch. "You missed the earlier bus," he called. I stopped with my hand on my backpack strap. He smiled, but not in a friendly way exactly. more like he was proud of noticing. "You usually walk up about 3:42. The exact time made my stomach drop. I didn't answer. I just went inside and locked the door. That night, I checked my bedroom curtains. The broken panel left a narrow slit on one side. From my bed, I had never thought much about it. From across the street, especially from Mr. Harlan's upstairs window, I realized it might have lined up almost perfectly with my desk. I moved my desk lamp to the other side of the room. For about 2 weeks, nothing obvious happened. Mr. Harlan still waved, but he didn't say anything strange. I convinced myself he had noticed I was uncomfortable and backed off. Then my little brother found the notebook page. He was 10 and always kicking a soccer ball around the front yard. One Saturday, the ball went under the hedge near the edge of our property. When he crawled after it, he pulled out a folded piece of yellow paper that had gotten wet and dirty. He brought it inside because he thought it was homework I had dropped. It wasn't mine. The paper had times written on it in neat pencil. 7:18 bus, 3:44 home, 6:12 trash, 10:03 porch, 1:51 light off. There were dates down the left side, but the top of the page had ripped away. My brother didn't understand why I got so quiet. I took it to my mom. She stared at it for a long time, then called my dad into the kitchen. That was the first time my parents stopped explaining things away. My dad went across the street with the paper. I watched from the upstairs window, standing to the side so I couldn't be seen. Mr. Harlan opened the door and looked surprised, but not scared. My dad talked for maybe 3 minutes. Mr. Harlan kept shaking his head. Then he pointed toward our house, toward the hedge, and said something that made my dad turn around and look at our yard. When Dad came back, he said Mr. Harlan denied the paper was his. He claimed kids walked through the neighborhood all the time and anyone could have dropped it. My mom wanted to call the police right away. My dad said we needed something more than a piece of paper in a hedge. So we started locking everything. Windows, side gate, garage door, even during the day. My dad fixed my curtains and installed a cheap motion light near the side yard. I hated how our house suddenly felt like a place we had to defend. The tapping started 3 nights later. It was soft at first. 3 little sounds spaced out. Tick, tick, tick. I was in bed, half awake, thinking it was a branch against the window. But there was no tree close enough to reach the glass. I held still and listened. A minute passed. Then it came again. Tick, tick. Not from the window exactly. Lower, near the outside wall by the fence. I sat up slowly. My room was dark except for the hallway light under the door. I remember the stupidest detail. I had a water bottle on my nightstand with a cracked label, and I kept staring at it because I didn't want to look at the window. Another tap. I got out of bed and moved toward the curtain. I didn't throw it open. Something in me knew not to. I pinched the fabric between 2 fingers and pulled it just enough to see the side yard. At first, I saw nothing but fence shadows. Then I saw the top of Mr. Harlan's head near the gate. He was standing inside our side yard, just below my bedroom window looking up. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body did this strange thing where it went cold and heavy at the same time. He wasn't wearing a coat, even though it was freezing. He had one hand on the fence, and the other holding something small and dark. A phone, I think. Or maybe a flashlight. I stepped backward and knocked over the water bottle. His head turned. That was when I ran to my parents' room. My dad grabbed a baseball bat from his closet, which sounds ridiculous now, but at the time it was the only thing nearby. My mom called the police. By the time Dad opened the back door and shouted, Mr. Harlan was already crossing his driveway, like he had simply been out for a walk. The police came, spoke to him, and spoke to us. Mr. Harlan told them he had seen movement near the side of the house and came over to check for burglars. He said he tapped on the wall to scare whoever it was away. When the officer asked why he didn't call us or call them, he said he didn't want to bother anybody. The thing that made the officer's face change was when my mom showed him the notebook page. We installed cameras the next day. My dad put one above the garage, one by the side gate, and one facing the backyard. For the first few nights, nothing happened. Mr. Harlan stayed inside. His curtains were shut. His car didn't move. Then on the fifth night, the camera caught him. He appeared at 12:38 a.m., standing on the sidewalk across from our house. He didn't come onto the property. He just stood there facing my bedroom window. At 1:12, he walked away. At 2:06, he came back. At 2:41, he stood near the side fence for 9 minutes. There were recordings from 2 more nights after that. The police returned. This time, they took it seriously. I don't know exactly what they said to him. My parents didn't tell me all of it, and I didn't push. I know he insisted he was watching out for the neighborhood. I know he said people were ungrateful. I know he called me that girl with the late light, which made my mom cry after the officers left. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared on his lawn. By January, he was gone. People on the street acted like it was a sad little misunderstanding. A lonely widower with bad boundaries. That was the phrase one neighbor used. Bad boundaries. Like he had borrowed a rake and forgotten to give it back. But years later, I still think about that yellow notebook page. The dates on it went back farther than I first noticed. Some were from before school started that year. Some were from summer. One line said, "Window open 11:34, and I have no idea what night that was. The scariest part was not seeing him under my window. It was realizing he had been there long before I knew to look." Story 2. The first thing I saw in the upstairs window of the empty house was not a face, but the quick movement of a curtain that was supposed to have rotted shut years ago. We moved into that neighborhood when I was 29, after my husband got a better job, and we finally found a place with enough room for our 2 kids. It was one of those older subdivisions where the streets curved in loops, and every house had a slightly different version of the same porch. Our house needed paint, but it had a good kitchen, a fenced yard, and a maple tree that made the whole place feel settled. The house to our left was the only ugly part. It had been empty for years, according to everyone. The grass was overgrown in patches, not tall enough to get the city involved every week, but bad enough to make it look forgotten. Flyers were wedged in the doorframe. The mailbox leaned forward. The windows had that dusty gray look glass gets when nobody wipes it from either side. On moving day, I asked the woman across the street what happened to it. "Bank owns it, I think," she said. "Or some family fighting over it. Nobody's lived there since before my grandson was born." Her grandson looked about 5. At first, the empty house was just an annoyance. Leaves from its yard blew into ours. The kids made up stories about it being haunted, which I shut down because I didn't want them daring each other to go inside. My husband, Daniel, joked that at least we had quiet neighbors on that side. The first sound came about 3 weeks after we moved in. I was washing dishes after the kids were asleep when I heard a dull thump from outside. Not loud, more like someone dropping a box on carpet. I looked through the kitchen window toward the empty house. Everything was dark. The next night I heard it again. This time it sounded like furniture dragging. Daniel said old houses make noise, especially with temperature changes. That made sense. Our own house popped and creaked at night. I was still getting used to its sounds, but the noises from next door had direction. They moved. Some nights they were upstairs. Some nights they were closer to the back. Once, while I was folding laundry in our bedroom, I heard 3 footsteps clearly enough that I paused with one of my daughter's shirts in my hands. Step, step, step. Then silence. I started asking around. The man 2 doors down said teenagers sometimes broke into empty places. The woman across the street said raccoons could sound like people if they got into walls. Daniel said the simplest answer was usually the right one, and the simplest answer was animals. Then our son, who was 7, asked why the old house had a night light. We were eating breakfast. He said it casually, over cereal, pointing with his spoon toward the side window. "What night light?" I asked. The little blink went upstairs. Daniel and I looked at each other. That night, after the kids went to bed, we turned off our downstairs lights and stood in our dining room. For about 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then a faint light flickered behind the second-floor curtains of the empty house. Not steady, not bright. It blinked once, disappeared, then blinked again farther to the left, like someone had turned a small flashlight away from the window. Daniel's expression changed then. He still tried to make it reasonable. Maybe a reflection. Maybe a car. Maybe someone checking the property. At the time, I wanted him to be right because the alternative meant we had been sleeping beside someone hiding. A few days later, I found the back gate open. Our yard had a wooden gate that latched from the inside. That morning, it was hanging loose. I blamed the kids at first, then remembered they hadn't played outside the day before because it had rained. Near the fence line between our house and the empty one, the mud had 2 deep shoe prints facing our kitchen window. They were too large to be my children's. Daniel's work boots had a square heel, and these were rounded. We called the non-emergency police line. An officer came by, walked around the outside of the empty house, shined a flashlight through a few windows, and said he didn't see any signs of forced entry. He told us to call again if we saw someone. That advice sounded fine until the next thing happened. I worked part-time from home then, doing billing for a dental office. My desk was in the front room, where I could see both driveways. One afternoon, a white sedan pulled up in front of the empty house. A man in a dark jacket got out, looked around, and walked to the front door with a stack of papers. I assumed he was from the bank or city. He knocked. Then he waited. Then the front door opened about 6 inches from the inside. I stood up so quickly my chair hit the wall. The man at the door did not look surprised. He slipped the papers through the gap, said something I couldn't hear, and walked back to his car. The door closed. I called Daniel first instead of the police. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me thought I had misunderstood. Maybe because calling the police again felt dramatic. Daniel told me to write down the car plate if it came back. It didn't. But that night, the noises were louder than ever. Something scraped across the upstairs floor around midnight. Then came a sound like a drawer opening and closing. Daniel slept through most of it because he had an early shift. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling. The next evening was when I saw the face. I had taken the trash out after dinner. The sky was that gray-blue color before full dark, when windows looked black from outside. I glanced at the empty house without meaning to. A person was standing in the second-floor window. I saw only part of the face because the curtain covered one side. Pale forehead, one eye, the outline of a cheek. They were not moving. They were looking straight down at me. I dropped the trash bag. The face pulled back. This time I didn't call Daniel first. I called 911. The police arrived with 2 cars. Daniel took the kids to the back room so they wouldn't see the officers going around the empty house with flashlights. I stood on our porch shaking, embarrassed by how I sounded while explaining it. The officers found the back door unlocked. That was the first real proof that something was wrong. They searched the house and found no one. No person in the closets. No person in the attic. No person under the stairs. But when they came out, one officer showed the other something on his flashlight beam near the back entry. Fresh footprints and dust. The house was dusty everywhere, they said. Thick dust. Years of it. But in the hallway and on the stairs, there were paths where someone had walked recently. Not just once. Repeatedly. They also found an empty water bottle, a food wrapper, and a blanket folded behind an upstairs door. The officer asked if we had noticed anything missing from our property. I said no. Then I remembered the gate, the footprints by our kitchen window, the flickering light. He told us carefully that someone may have been using the house for shelter and avoiding detection. He said not to approach it if we saw anything else. For about a week, police came by more often. A city notice went up on the front door. Someone from code enforcement inspected it. Then workers arrived with plywood and boarded the windows and doors. The neighborhood treated it like excitement. People stood on sidewalks talking about it. The man 2 doors down said he had known all along. The woman across the street said it was probably just a homeless person, and we should be grateful nothing worse happened. I did feel sorry for whoever had been staying there. I still do, in a way. But sympathy does not erase the part one cannot explain. After the house was boarded, Daniel and I walked the fence line to check for damage. Behind a bush on our side, almost hidden in leaves, we found a small cleared place in the dirt. Someone had been standing there often enough to press down the ground. From that spot, you could see through our kitchen window, through the dining room, and straight to the staircase where our kids came down every morning. There was also a cigarette, but in the dirt. Nobody in my family smoked. Months later, the house sold at auction. A contractor bought it, cleaned it out, and turned it into something normal looking. New siding, new roof, bright front door. A young couple moved in with a baby, and I never told them everything. I only said the house had been empty for a long time, and they should change all the locks. They laughed and said they already had. Sometimes I still pass their house and see curtains in that upstairs window. Clean curtains now. White ones. Normal ones. But I always remember the gray curtain moving, and that half face watching me from a house everyone swore nobody could enter. I do not believe the house was haunted. I believe someone was living close enough to hear us call it empty. Story 3. The woman next door asked for sugar so many times that I started measuring our bag, just to prove I was not imagining it. Her name was Elaine, and she moved into the duplex beside ours during the spring after my dad left. My mom was working double shifts at the hospital cafeteria then, and I was home more than most kids my age because I had to watch my little sister after school. We lived in a narrow 2-story place with thin walls and a shared front path. You could hear cabinets shut next door if the house was quiet. Elaine seemed nice at first. She was probably in her 40s, with short blonde hair and big glasses that made her eyes look gentle. She brought us banana bread the week she moved in. She apologized for the moving truck blocking our driveway. She remembered my sister's name after hearing it once. The first time she knocked, she asked for a cup of sugar. "My head's all over the place," she said, smiling like she was embarrassed. I started baking and didn't check first. My mom gave her some. 2 days later, Elaine came back for tea bags, then batteries, then a phone charger, then tape. Always small things. Always things you could imagine someone forgetting. She never stayed long, but she always looked past whoever opened the door. At the time, I thought she was lonely. My mom thought that too. She said Elaine probably didn't know anyone and was trying to make friends in a clumsy way. I wanted my mom to like her because we needed adults nearby. My dad had moved across town, and although he still called, he wasn't showing up to fix things or carry groceries anymore. Elaine felt like the kind of neighbor people are supposed to have. Then the questions started. "Your mom working tonight?" she asked once, holding an empty mug she claimed she needed coffee for. I said yes without thinking. "Late shift?" I nodded. "Poor thing. And it's just you girls here." That was the first time I lied to her. I said my uncle was coming over. He wasn't. She smiled in a way that did not change her eyes. Good. Always safer to have a man around. I remember feeling ashamed for being bothered by it. She was probably trying to be kind. Adults say weird things when they think they're giving advice. But Elaine kept finding reasons to come over when my mom's car was gone. She asked for a flashlight during a thunderstorm, even though her lights were on. She asked if our Wi-Fi was working. She asked if we had a ladder because something might be wrong upstairs. Once, she knocked at almost 9 and said she smelled gas. My heart jumped, but when I came to the door, she leaned in and said, "Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's just your dinner." My sister liked her because Elaine gave her stickers. That made things harder. My sister was 8 and still believed any adult who smiled at her was safe. Elaine would crouch down and ask about school, about friends, about whether she had her own room. "She does," my sister said proudly one afternoon. "Mine is the one facing the back." I cut in too sharply, and my sister got mad at me after Elaine left. "You're being rude," she said. Maybe I was. That was the problem. Elaine had positioned herself so that noticing her felt rude. The object that changed everything was our spare key. We kept one outside because my mom worried I would lose mine. It was hidden in a fake rock near the back steps, which I always thought was stupid because every fake rock looks like a fake rock. My mom insisted no one would know unless we told them. One Friday morning, I came downstairs early and saw Elaine through the kitchen window. She was standing near our back steps, looking down at the ground. She wasn't bending yet, just standing there in her robe and slippers like she had wandered out half asleep. I opened the back door and said, "Can I help you?" She startled hard. Too hard. "Oh," she said. "I thought I saw a cat." There were no cats in the yard. After she went inside, I checked the fake rock. The key was still there. I told myself that proved nothing had happened. For the next week, Elaine stopped coming over. I almost missed it because the silence made me feel silly. Maybe she sensed I didn't like her and decided to leave us alone. Maybe I had been unfair. Then on a Wednesday afternoon, school let out early because of a staff meeting. My sister went to a friend's house, and my mom was at work. I walked home alone, annoyed because it had started raining and my backpack was getting wet. Our front door was shut. I unlocked it, stepped inside, and immediately knew something was wrong. The house smelled like Elaine's perfume. Not strongly, just enough. Powdery and sweet, like the banana bread day. I stood in the entryway with my keys still in my hand. The living room looked normal. The TV was off. My sister's shoes were by the stairs. Nothing was broken. Then a floorboard creaked upstairs. I should have left. I know that now. I should have stepped right back outside and called someone. Instead, I thought maybe my mom had come home sick, or my sister had skipped going to her friends, or any number of normal explanations. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I took 3 steps toward the stairs. Elaine appeared at the top landing. She was wearing her green cardigan and holding one of our pillowcases. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. "You scared me," she said, like I had walked into her house. "Your door was open." No, it wasn't. The words came out before I could soften them. Her smile held. "Well, it was when I came by. I thought maybe something happened. You know, with your mom working so much." I looked at the pillowcase in her hand. She glanced down as if she had forgotten it. "I was just checking if your laundry had gotten wet by the window. Rain can come in upstairs if the frame is bad." That made no sense. My bedroom windows were closed. So were my sister's. And Elaine had no reason to know which room was which except that my sister had told her. I stepped backward toward the door. Elaine started down the stairs. Not fast. That was somehow worse. She moved carefully, speaking in a calm voice. "Don't be upset," she said. "I was helping. Your mother will understand." I opened the front door behind me without taking my eyes off her. Rain blew in. My hands were shaking so badly that my keys rattled. "I'm calling her," I said. Something in Elaine changed then. Not her face exactly, but the softness left. She stopped on the bottom step. "You don't need to make trouble over nothing," she said. I ran outside and stood in the rain on the front lawn while I called my mom. Elaine came out a minute later, locked our front door with her own hand, and walked calmly to her side of the duplex. That was the part one kept replaying. She locked our door. My mom left work. She arrived with her supervisor, a large woman named Denise who refused to let my mom go inside alone. They checked the house while I sat in the car crying from anger more than fear. Nothing obvious was missing. Then my mom checked the fake rock. The spare key was gone. We called the police. Elaine told the officer the door had been open and that she had stepped in because she worried about us. She denied having a key. She denied taking anything. She denied being upstairs until I misunderstood what I saw. But when my mom searched the linen closet later, she found 2 pillowcases missing. Just pillowcases. Not jewelry, not electronics, not money from the jar in the kitchen. That bothered me more than if she had stolen something valuable. My mom changed the locks that night. She also bought a lockbox for the back door and told my sister she was never to answer the door without permission again. My sister cried because she thought she had done something wrong. I remember my mom holding her and saying adults are responsible for adult behavior. Elaine stopped knocking after that. For a while, she acted offended. If we passed her on the walkway, she turned away. If my mom parked beside her, Elaine would hurry inside. Her curtains stayed closed almost all day, but sometimes I could see a thin line of movement behind them. A month later, her landlord came by. I watched him carry boxes out with Elaine's brother. She moved quietly, without saying goodbye to anyone. After she left, the landlord replaced the carpet and painted. He found our missing pillowcases in a storage bin in Elaine's laundry room, folded neatly with other random things. A child's mitten, a cracked phone charger, a small hairbrush, a stack of envelopes that did not have her name on them. The police said it was strange, but not enough to prove what she had intended. That sentence has stayed with me. Not enough to prove what she had intended. I am older now, and I have my own place. I do not keep spare keys outside. I do not answer every knock. I do not let politeness decide whether I feel safe. Because the worst part was not finding Elaine in our hallway. The worst part was remembering how many times we had opened the door for her first. Story 4. The knocking in our basement wall always started at 11:07, which was the only reason I stopped believing it was the pipes. We rented that house during my sophomore year, because my parents were trying to save money after my dad's hours got cut. It was an old row house with a narrow front, a steep staircase, and a basement that smelled like wet cardboard no matter how many fans my mom ran. The landlord called it character. My dad called it temporary. I slept in the small room above the kitchen. At night, when the rest of the house got quiet, I could hear the refrigerator click on, cars passing, my parents talking softly through the wall. I wasn't a brave kid, but I also wasn't the kind who imagined things for attention. I had homework, part-time shifts at a pizza place, and enough problems without inventing more. The first knock came about a month after we moved in. I was in the basement getting laundry because I had forgotten my work shirt in the dryer. The basement was unfinished, with concrete floors and exposed beams. One wall was brick, but the wall on the left had been covered with old wood paneling. Our landlord said the neighbor's basement was on the other side. As I pulled clothes from the dryer, I heard 2 taps from behind the paneling. Knock, knock. I froze, then laughed at myself because old houses make noise. I went upstairs and forgot about it. The next night, I heard it from the kitchen. Same sound. Same wall below. 2 knocks, then 1. I checked the microwave clock. 11:07. My dad said it was probably pipes expanding after people used hot water. My mom said it might be the furnace. The house had radiators that hissed and clanked like they were annoyed to be working. So I accepted that. But pipes don't keep a schedule that neatly. For the next 2 weeks, the knocking came almost every night between 11:05 and 11:10. Sometimes 2 taps. Sometimes 4. One night it sounded like someone dragging fingers along the other side. I started avoiding the basement after dark. That meant doing laundry earlier, which my mom thought was great. She said if fear got me to stop leaving socks in the dryer, she supported it. The neighbor attached to our left side was a man named Mr. Doran. He was maybe 50, with a heavy beard and a stiff walk. He kept to himself. I saw him leave early in the morning in a brown work jacket and come back around 6 with a plastic grocery bag. He never had guests. He never played music. We shared a wall, but we barely heard him. One Saturday, my dad asked him about the noise when they both happened to be outside. Mr. Doran looked irritated before my dad even finished. "Houses settle," he said. My dad said, "Sure, but this sounds like it's coming from the shared wall." Mr. Doran shrugged. "Not from me. That should have ended it." Instead, the knocking changed. The next night, it came at 11:07 like always, but this time it had a pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. I was sitting at the kitchen table pretending to study. My parents were watching TV in the living room. I heard it clearly through the floor. I tapped back on the tabletop without thinking. 3. 3. 1. The basement went silent. Then from below came one hard bang that shook the floor. My mom muted the TV. My dad looked toward the basement door. "What was that?" he asked. I lied and said I dropped my textbook. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because I felt guilty for tapping back. Maybe because I didn't want my parents to tell me I was being childish. But after that, the knocking felt less like a house sound and more like something answering. A few days later, I noticed the crack. It was behind a shelf of paint cans in the basement, low on the paneled wall. The panel had warped away from the brick by maybe half an inch. I only saw it because I dropped a sock and it slid behind the shelf. When I moved the cans, I felt a faint draft coming through. I leaned close and smelled cigarette smoke. No one in our house smoked. I stood there listening. At first, nothing. Then a small scrape came from the other side, like a chair leg moving on concrete. I went upstairs and told my mom. This time she didn't joke. She came down, smelled the crack, and called my dad. He inspected it with a flashlight and said the wall probably had gaps into the neighbor's basement. He didn't like it, but he still thought the sound could be normal. "We'll tell the landlord," he said. The landlord came 2 days later, looked for less than 5 minutes, and said sealing the wall would be cosmetic. He promised to send someone when he had time. He never did. Meanwhile, Mr. Doran started acting differently. He knocked on our front door one evening and asked if we had been in his backyard. My dad said no. Mr. Doran looked past him into the house, then asked if we had kids. He knew we did. He had seen me. "My son," my dad said carefully. "Why?" Mr. Doran stared at the staircase behind my dad. "Just keep him out of trouble." After he left, my dad called him rude. My mom locked the door. The final night happened in February during a freezing rainstorm. My parents were asleep. I was awake because I had a history test the next day and had done what I always did, which was wait until it was nearly too late to study. At 11:07, the knocking started. This time it was loud. Not taps, fists. It came from the basement wall in a rapid, uneven rhythm. I sat up in bed. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom down the hall. "Do you hear that?" Before I could answer, the sound stopped. Then I heard something worse. A voice. It was faint but clear enough to understand through the old vents and hollow spaces of the house. "Hey!" I got out of bed and opened my door. My mom was already in the hallway in her robe. My dad came out behind her. The voice came again from below. "Please." My dad told us to stay upstairs. He went down with his phone flashlight. My mom followed despite telling me not to. I stood at the basement door, heart pounding, listening to their footsteps. Then my dad said my name sharply. "Go upstairs." I didn't. I crept down just far enough to see the paneled wall. The shelf of paint cans had been pushed aside. The warped crack looked darker than before. From the other side, someone whispered, close enough that it felt like they were inside our basement. "Don't tell them you heard me." My mom made a sound I had never heard from her before. My dad grabbed her arm and pulled her back. He called 911 from the stairs. We locked ourselves in the living room with every light on until police arrived. The officers went first to Mr. Doran's house. He didn't answer. They knocked louder. Then they went around back. I watched through our kitchen window as flashlights moved across both yards. It took them almost 15 minutes to get inside. Later, I learned the back door was blocked from within by stacked boxes. The basement stairs had a chain latch at the top, which made no sense unless someone was trying to keep another person from coming up. They found a man in the basement. He was Mr. Doran's younger cousin, though at first Mr. Doran called him a guest. The man had been staying down there for weeks, maybe longer. The officers would not tell us much because it became some kind of investigation involving family, money, and whether he was there willingly the whole time. I only know he looked thin when they brought him out under a blanket, and he kept his face turned away from the houses. Mr. Doran was questioned. The police came back twice. After that, we never saw the cousin again. Our landlord suddenly became very interested in repairs, but my parents had already decided we were leaving. We moved out at the end of March and stayed with my aunt until we found another rental. For a long time, I felt guilty about the tapping. I wondered if he had been trying to get help from the beginning, and I had ignored him because I was afraid of looking foolish. My mom told me I was a kid and adults should have noticed. That helped, but not completely. Years later, I drove past that row house. The outside looked the same. Same narrow porch. Same basement window half below the ground. Someone had painted the front door blue. I parked across the street for maybe a minute, though I'm not sure why. Then I noticed the shared wall from the outside, how little space there was between one family's ordinary life and another person's hidden one. The voice I heard that night was not loud. That is what still bothers me. It did not have to be loud, because he was closer than any of us wanted to believe. Story 5. The camera was only the size of a tennis ball, but from my bedroom it felt like an eye that never blinked. Our new neighbor installed it during the first week of summer. The same week I started sleeping with my window cracked because our upstairs air conditioner barely worked. His name was Mr. Keene. He bought the blue house behind ours after the previous owners moved closer to their grandchildren. Everyone on our block was curious because houses didn't change hands often there. Mr. Keene seemed ordinary at first. Quiet, polite, maybe a little too formal. He introduced himself to my dad over the back fence and said he worked in insurance investigations. I remember that because my dad later joked, so basically he gets paid not to trust people. Nobody cared when the first camera went up above his garage. Package theft had been happening in nearby neighborhoods, and people were nervous about it. Then he added one by his front door, then two under the back eaves, then one on a pole near the corner of his yard. My parents thought he was just careful. I was 16 and spent most evenings in my room, which faced the back. Our yard backed up to his, separated by a wooden privacy fence that was tall enough to block people standing on the ground, but not tall enough to block a camera mounted high on a pole. At first, I didn't notice where it pointed. It was just a black dome tucked under the little white housing. Then one afternoon, I was changing my bed sheets and saw the lens move. It turned from his driveway, past the fence, and stopped facing my window. I stood there holding a pillowcase, waiting for it to move again. It didn't. I told myself it probably covered a wide angle. Cameras can look like they are aimed at you when they aren't. I knew that because I had watched enough doorbell camera clips online to understand perspective. Still, I closed my curtains. That night, I opened them a little because my room got too stuffy. The camera was still facing the same direction. The next morning, I mentioned it to my mom. She came upstairs, looked out, and frowned. "Maybe it's catching the alley," she said. There was no alley. My dad went over that evening. I watched from the kitchen while he stood at Mr. Keene's back gate. They talked for a few minutes. Mr. Keene nodded a lot. He even looked embarrassed. When Dad came back, he said it was fine. He said he didn't realize it lined up with your room, Dad told me. He'll adjust it. And he did. For 3 days, the camera pointed down toward his patio. I felt silly for being worried. I even felt bad for making my dad confront him. Mr. Keene waved at me once when I took the recycling out, and I waved back because avoiding him seemed childish. Then the camera moved back. I noticed it at 1:30 in the morning. I had woken up thirsty and gone to close my window because it smelled like rain. Across the yard, the little red infrared lights on the camera glowed faintly. They were aimed straight at my window again. I closed the curtains and put a chair in front of them to hold the fabric tight. The next day, my dad went over again. This time the conversation was shorter. Mr. Keene didn't nod. His shoulders got stiff. My dad came home annoyed. He says the camera is on his property, and it's for security, he said. My mom said, but he agreed to move it. He says wind must have shifted it. I looked outside. The pole was metal and bolted to the fence post. Wind had not shifted anything. The strange part was that Mr. Keene became friendlier after that, at least to everyone else. He offered to share footage when Mrs. Patel's planter went missing. He told the couple across the street he had seen a suspicious car at 4 a.m. He became the unofficial security person of the block, and people liked that. It made me feel trapped because complaining about him sounded like complaining about safety. A week later, I found out he knew when my parents were gone. I was in the backyard reading on the steps. My parents had driven to my aunt's house, and I had stayed home because I had a headache. Mr. Keene appeared at his fence. "Home alone today?" he asked. I looked up. He smiled. "Your folks left about 20 minutes ago." I stood and said, "My brother's inside." My brother was not inside. He was at basketball practice. Mr. Keene's smile stayed. "Good." Then he went back into his house. I told my mom as soon as she got home. That was when she stopped treating it like a neighbor dispute and started documenting everything. She took pictures of the camera from my room. My dad ordered privacy film online. We kept the curtains closed even during the day, which made my room feel like a storage closet. The confrontation happened on a Saturday. My dad was mowing the yard, and I was helping my mom carry groceries inside. Mr. Keene came out to adjust the camera with a ladder. I saw him tilt it downward, then after my dad went to the front yard with the mower, tilt it back up again. I said, "Mom." She saw it too. My dad shut off the mower and walked straight to the fence. My mom followed. I stayed on the porch even though she told me to go inside. Dad said, "We've already talked about this." Mr. Keene climbed down slowly. "It covers my property," he said. "It's pointed at my daughter's bedroom." Then close the curtains. My dad's face went red. "Excuse me?" Mr. Keene stepped closer to the fence. He wasn't yelling yet, but his voice had changed. "Maybe you should close your curtains if you care so much." That sentence turned the whole thing from awkward to dangerous. Not because it was loud, but because it sounded practiced. My mom pulled out her phone and started recording. Mr. Keene noticed and immediately changed tone. "I'm not doing anything illegal," he said. My mom said, "Then you won't mind explaining that to the police." We didn't call 911. We filed a report. My parents also contacted the homeowners association, which usually only cared about trash cans and paint colors, but suddenly became useful because the pole was higher than allowed. Privacy film went up on my window that week. It made the glass look cloudy from outside. My dad also installed a small camera facing our backyard, not toward anyone's windows, just enough to record the fence line. For a while, Mr. Keene left us alone. Then one evening, our camera caught him at the fence after midnight. He didn't cross over. He didn't damage anything. He stood with his hands on the top rail, looking toward our house. The privacy film meant he couldn't see in, but he stayed there for 7 minutes. My dad sent the footage to the officer who had taken the report and to the HOA. The HOA fined him for the camera pole. He appealed. They denied it. He took down the pole but left the other cameras. I wish I could say that ended it cleanly. The real ending came months later from Mrs. Patel, the neighbor with the missing planter. She stopped my mom at the mailbox and asked if we had ever had problems with Mr. Keene's cameras. My mom said yes carefully. Mrs. Patel looked upset and admitted her son had helped Mr. Keene set up a storage drive for the footage. While doing it, he had seen clips labeled by address, not by date. Our yard. The couple across the street's driveway. Mrs. Patel's side garden. The bus stop at the corner. None of that proved he had recorded inside anyone's house, but it proved he had been saving pieces of other people's lives. After that, more neighbors complained. Mr. Keene stopped attending HOA meetings. His grass got long. His garage stayed closed. By winter, a moving truck came. He left without saying goodbye. I am in college now, and I live in a dorm where there are cameras in hallways and keycard locks on every door. People say those things make them feel safe. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they make me remember how safety can be used as an excuse to watch someone who never agreed to be watched. The privacy film stayed on my old bedroom window, even after I moved out. When I visit my parents, I still see it from the backyard, dull and cloudy in the sunlight. It is strange how a window can look closed forever, even when it is open. Hashtag the delivery that was never scheduled. The package had my name on it, my address on it, and a delivery time I had never chosen. I was working evenings at a supermarket when it happened, mostly stocking shelves and collecting online orders from the back room. I was 18, saving for community college, and still living with my parents in a townhouse complex near the edge of town. Our neighborhood was one of those places where every door looked similar after dark. Same porch lights, same square lawns, same narrow driveways. I ordered things online all the time. Cheap phone cases, used textbooks, a replacement charger because mine kept bending near the end. So when I came home one night and saw a small brown box on the porch, I didn't think much about it. Then I saw the delivery note. It wasn't from any company I recognized. The label looked homemade, printed on plain white paper and taped badly across the top. My full name was typed in the center. Under it was our exact address. In the corner, someone had written, "Leave after 9:45 p.m. recipient alone." I stood there with my work vest over my arm, staring at those words. Recipient alone. My parents had gone to a wedding that evening, and my younger brother was sleeping over at a friend's house. I was in fact alone, but no delivery company would know that. No delivery company would write that. I took the box inside because leaving it outside felt worse. I locked the door, set it on the kitchen table, and called my mom. She answered over loud music and told me not to open it. Then she asked if maybe it was a prank from someone at work. That was possible. Supermarket employees have a weird sense of humor, especially when everybody is tired. But nobody at work knew my parents were gone. I hadn't told anyone. I had only mentioned that I wanted to finish closing quickly because I hated walking home after 10. The box was light. No ticking, no smell, nothing leaking. I know that sounds dramatic, but you think of every movie thing when a strange box appears with your name on it. I waited until my parents came home. My dad opened it in the garage with a utility knife while my mom stood behind him like distance would help. Inside was a folded receipt, a black phone charger, and a photograph of our front door. The charger was the same type I had bought 2 weeks earlier. The receipt was from the gas station at the corner, printed that same day at 9:12 p.m. It showed 1 bottle of water paid in cash. On the back, written in blue pen, was, "Wrong night." My dad wanted to believe it was someone from work. My mom wanted to call the police. I felt embarrassed because both options made me the center of something I didn't understand. We called the non-emergency line. An officer came, looked at the box, and said it was concerning but hard to act on without a suspect. He advised us to keep the package, save the label, and check whether neighbors had cameras. The next day my dad went door to door. Most people had doorbell cameras pointed at their own porches. Our direct neighbor, Mr. Vasquez, had one facing the walkway between units. His footage showed a person in a gray hoodie walking toward our door at 9:48 p.m. The camera didn't catch the face. It caught the shoes, though, white sneakers with a black stripe, very clean. The person placed the box down, stepped back, and looked toward the parking lot before leaving. They moved like they knew exactly where the camera was. For a few days, nothing else happened. Then I found the second note in my work locker. It was folded into a square and pushed through the vent slot. No envelope. No name on the outside. Inside, in the same blue pen, someone had written, "You should not walk home with headphones in." I stopped wearing headphones immediately. The worst part was that the note was correct. I did walk home with one earbud in most nights. It was only a 15-minute walk, mostly along lit streets, and I had done it so many times that I stopped treating it like something that could change. I told my manager, Dana. She was practical in a way I trusted. She checked the break room camera, the hall camera, and the camera near the lockers. The hallway camera had been blocked for 13 minutes by a stack of flattened cardboard someone had leaned against the wall during closing. That was the first time I realized whoever left the note might be someone who knew the store. Dana changed the keypad code for the employee hallway. She also scheduled me to leave with another employee whenever possible. I hated that. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because it made me feel like I had brought trouble into everyone's routine. The next clue came from the receipt. My dad kept looking at it because the gas station time bothered him. At 9:12, I had still been at work. The gas station was between the store and my house. Whoever bought the water could have watched me leave or waited to see if I did. My mom went to the gas station and asked about footage. They wouldn't give it to her, but the police requested it after we reported the locker note. The footage showed a person in a gray hoodie paying cash for water. The hood covered most of the face. But Dana noticed something when the officer brought still images to the store. The person had a bandage around their right wrist. One of our co-workers, Marcus, had been wearing a wrist brace that week because he said he sprained it unloading crates. I didn't want it to be Marcus. He was 23, friendly, and one of the few people who didn't make me feel stupid for being new. He had walked me home once after a late shift when it rained. He knew where I lived because I told him that night. He knew about my charger because I had complained in the break room. He knew I hated walking home after 10. But the shoes in the camera footage were wrong. Marcus wore black work shoes. The hoodie person wore white sneakers. That detail probably saved me from accusing the wrong person. 2 nights later, Marcus offered to walk me home again. Something about the timing made me uneasy. Dana had already arranged for another co-worker, Layla, to leave with me. Marcus said he could do it instead because he lived closer. He said it in front of Layla, smiling, giving everyone an easy reason to agree. I looked down. He was wearing black work shoes like always. Then I saw the edge of white sneaker soles sticking out of his backpack under the break room table. I know how small that sounds. Shoes in a backpack. It could have meant anything. But my whole body reacted before my brain did. I told him I forgot something in the manager's office and walked straight to Dana. Dana did not confront him. That is what I respect most about her. She kept her face normal, told Marcus she needed him to help with freezer inventory, and sent me and Layla out through the front entrance where the cameras were clear. Then she called the police officer handling the report. Marcus left before they arrived. The next morning, he did not come to work. Police went to his apartment. Again, they didn't tell us everything, but Dana later said they found a gray hoodie, white sneakers, and printed labels with several addresses. Not just mine. 2 other women who worked closing shifts had notes in the stack, though neither had received anything yet. Marcus claimed it was a joke. He said he was trying to teach us to be more aware because the neighborhood was unsafe. He said he never meant to hurt anyone. He said the package was supposed to scare me a little, not cause trouble. I think about that phrase sometimes. A little. He knew when I was alone. He blocked the camera. He left a note in my locker. He tried to replace the person walking me home. But in his version, my fear was the misunderstanding. He was fired. There was a court process, but I was not involved in much of it. My parents installed a doorbell camera. I changed jobs before the next semester started. For months, I checked shoes before faces when men walked past me. I still have the charger from the box. I never used it. It sits in a drawer with the receipt and the photograph because throwing it away felt like pretending it had not happened. The part that stays with me most is not the package itself. It is that Marcus had once walked beside me in the rain, holding his jacket over both of us like he was being kind. And the whole time, he was learning the way home. Story 6. The 3rd package had my name crossed out in black marker, but the address underneath was still mine. That was the detail I could not stop thinking about later. Not the size of the box, not the nervous way my neighbor came over, not even what I saw inside by accident. It was the fact that at some point, someone had written my name on that label and then decided I was not supposed to see it. This happened when I was living in a duplex on the edge of town, the kind of place where people are friendly enough to wave, but not friendly enough to ask questions. I had the left half. My neighbor, Mr. Voss, had the right. I only knew his last name because it was printed neatly on his mailbox in silver letters. I worked from home back then, doing customer support for an insurance company. It was not exciting work, but it meant I was usually the person home when deliveries came. The drivers figured that out quickly. If a package needed a signature, they rang my bell first, even if it was not mine. The first time a box for Mr. Voss came to my door, I did not think anything of it. The driver said, "Neighbors not answering," and handed it over. The box was small, plain brown cardboard, with no company logo. About 10 minutes later, Mr. Voss knocked. He was a thin man in his late 40s, always clean-shaven, always wearing button-up shirts even on weekends. When I opened the door, he already had his hand slightly out, like he expected me to pass it to him without talking. "Sorry," he said. "They keep mixing these up." I laughed and said it was no problem. He thanked me twice and walked back across the shared porch holding the box against his chest. That became a routine. Every couple of weeks, something arrived for him. He always came fast. Not later that day. Not after work. Usually within minutes. Once, I had barely brought the package inside before I heard his knock. At the time, I thought he was just careful about theft. We had porch pirates around Christmas, and one of my own packages had disappeared the year before. I even respected it. Some people are private. The strange part started with how he always seemed to know when I had the package before I told him. One afternoon in April, I was in a meeting when a delivery driver rang the bell. I muted myself, signed for the box, and set it on the hall table. Less than 30 seconds later, while I was still walking back to my desk, Mr. Voss knocked. I remember thinking he must have been watching through his window. Still, I handed it over. He smiled, but it was tight, like his face was doing something his mind had not approved. "Did they say anything?" he asked. "Who?" "The delivery person." "No," I said. "Just asked me to sign." His eyes moved past my shoulder into my hallway. Not in a nosy way exactly. More like he was checking whether the box had been opened. That was the first time I felt embarrassed while standing in my own doorway. After that, I started paying more attention. The labels were always addressed to him, but the delivery notes had my unit number more often than his. Sometimes there was no sender. Sometimes there was only a return address to a business park in another state, but no business name. I told myself I was being paranoid because my job trained me to notice paperwork mistakes. The fourth package was heavier than the others. It arrived on a Thursday around 5. I was cooking pasta and had flour on my hands when the driver left it against my door without knocking. I almost tripped over it when I stepped outside to shake crumbs off a cutting board. This one was addressed to Mr. Voss, but the label was damaged. The top layer had peeled during shipping, and a second label underneath showed my full name. Not just my address, my name. I stood there on the porch with the box at my feet and felt that small, stupid chill you get when something ordinary becomes personal. Before I could decide what to do, Mr. Voss's door opened. He did not step out right away. He just stood inside, one hand on the knob, staring at the box. "Looks like another one of yours," I said, trying to sound casual. He walked over too quickly. "Thank you," he said. I pointed at the label. "Weird thing is, it has my name underneath." He looked down for half a second. "Printing error," he said. It was too fast. He had the answer ready before he had really looked. I should have asked more. I did not. I gave him the box because that was easier than standing there accusing my quiet neighbor of whatever I was starting to imagine. He carried it inside, and after his door closed, I heard his deadbolt turn. The package that changed everything came 6 days later. It was raining, and the cardboard was damp on one corner. I found it on my porch after lunch. No knock, no doorbell, no truck sound. Just there. It was addressed to Mr. Voss, but my unit number was handwritten in blue ink beneath the printed label. I picked it up and the bottom sagged. That is why it opened. I need to be clear about that, because I have replayed it in my head so many times. I did not slice it open. I did not snoop. The tape on the bottom had gone soft from the rain, and when I lifted the box, the flap dropped. A bundle of folded papers slid halfway out. I saw handwriting. Not invoices. Not instructions. Handwriting. Pages of it, on yellow legal paper, folded into stacks with rubber bands around them. One loose sheet had shifted out enough for me to read the top line. "Do not use her name again." I froze in the entryway holding this damp box, suddenly aware of every sound in the duplex. My refrigerator humming. Rain tapping the porch roof. Something moving on the other side of the shared wall. I should have closed it immediately. Instead, I made the kind of mistake normal people make when they are scared and curious at the same time. I looked at one more line. Blue curtains. Home most weekdays. Answers delivery. That was me. I had blue curtains in my front room. I worked from home. I answered deliveries. My hands went cold. I shoved the papers back inside and pressed the bottom flap shut. I put the package on the hall table and stood there trying to think like an adult. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was part of a legal case. Maybe Mr. Voss had a private investigator. Maybe the notes were about a different woman. My brain offered me anything except the most obvious possibility, that I had been used as part of something without knowing it. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the damaged label. Then I moved the package to the porch, right in front of his door, and went back inside. For 2 hours, nothing happened. That was worse than the knocking. I watched through the peephole like a child. His car was in the driveway. His blinds were closed. Around 5:30, I heard his door open. The package scraped across concrete. His door closed again. No knock. No thank you. I thought maybe that was the end of it. At 10:14 that night, he knocked on my door so hard the frame rattled. I had been half asleep on the couch. The TV was still on, some cooking show I had stopped watching. The knock came again, 3 quick hits. Then his voice. Open the door. Not, are you home? Not, sorry to bother you. Just that. I did not move at first. My phone was on the coffee table. I picked it up and typed 911 without calling. Then I walked to the door, but left the chain on. When I opened it 2 inches, Mr. Voss was standing under the porch light in a rain jacket. His hair was wet. His eyes looked different from how I remembered them. Not angry in a loud way. Focused. Did you open it? He asked. The box was wet, I said. My voice sounded too small. The bottom came loose. He stared at me. What did you see? Nothing really. You saw something. I did not answer. He leaned closer. The chain held, but suddenly it felt decorative. Listen to me, he said. You don't know what you are looking at. You need to give me anything you kept. I did not keep anything. His eyes flicked to my hand. I had forgotten my phone was there. Pictures? I lied. No. He nodded, but not like he believed me. I am trying to keep you out of this, he said. That sentence scared me more than if he had threatened me. Because it sounded practiced. It sounded like something a person says when the situation is already much bigger than a wet cardboard box. I gave it back, I said. Please go home. He looked past me again, into the dark hallway. Then he said very quietly, if someone asks, you never signed for anything. I signed for packages all the time. Not these. We stood there in silence. Then he stepped back, looked toward the street, and walked into his side of the duplex. I locked my door, pushed a chair under the knob, even though I knew that barely did anything, and finally called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher was polite, but unsure what to do with my story. A neighbor was receiving packages. One box opened. He asked if I looked inside. There was no direct threat, no crime I could name. The next morning, I reported everything to the delivery company. I sent the photo of the label and explained that packages addressed to my neighbor were being routed to me. The woman on the phone became much more serious when I mentioned my name underneath his label. She said she would flag the route. That phrase stayed with me. For about a week, no packages came. Then the visitors started. Not friends. Not family. Men I had never seen parked at the curb and went to Mr. Voss's door at odd hours. Sometimes they stayed 5 minutes. Sometimes they stayed past midnight. One woman came twice wearing sunglasses, even though both times were after dark. Nobody ever knocked on my side by mistake again. Mr. Voss stopped waving. Near the end of May, I woke up to a moving van outside. Not a company van. Just a rented truck. Mr. Voss and 2 men loaded it quickly. No furniture from what I could see. Mostly boxes. A folding table. 3 black plastic bins. By noon he was gone. He did not leave a note. His mailbox filled until the landlord came and taped a warning to the door. For weeks afterward, envelopes and flyers stuck out of the metal slot like the house itself was trying to talk. A month after he disappeared, a package arrived on my porch. It had no name, no sender, just my address, handwritten in blue ink. I did not touch it. I called the police that time, and they took it away. I never found out what was inside. Maybe nothing. Maybe something meant to scare me. Maybe another mistake. But I moved before my lease ended. People ask me sometimes what I think Mr. Voss was involved in, and I honestly do not know. I have guesses, but guesses are not answers. What I know is that for several months, someone used my door, my signature, and my routine as part of a system I was never supposed to notice. And the part that still bothers me is not that my neighbor lied. It is that somebody out there knew my curtains were blue. Story 7. The first note said, "Stay on your side. but it was tucked under my windshield on a morning when my car was perfectly parked. That sounds small, and at the beginning it felt small. Petty maybe. Annoying. The kind of neighbor problem people complain about at barbecues and then forget when they get home. I wish it had stayed that way. My wife and I bought that house because it was what we could afford. It was a narrow 2-story place with old siding, a little porch, and a shared driveway running between our house and the neighbors. The driveway was just wide enough for 2 cars if everyone behaved reasonably, which of course meant it was not really wide enough. The neighbor's name was Harold Bender. He was in his 60s, retired, and lived alone in the greenhouse on the right. The previous owner warned us about him during the final walkthrough, but he said it in a friendly way. "Harold's particular about the driveway," he said. "Just keep to your side and you'll be fine." At the time, I thought particular meant he liked things neat. I learned quickly that Harold treated the driveway like a border crossing. The first week, he came outside while I was unloading moving boxes. I had parked at a slight angle because the truck was blocking the street. "You're over," he said. I looked around, confused. "Over what?" He pointed at the cracked seam in the concrete. There was no painted line, just a natural split where the driveway had settled over time. "Your side ends there." I apologized and moved the car. I even thanked him for letting me know. That is embarrassing now, but back then I wanted to start off right. My wife, Dana, was pregnant with our first child, and I was determined not to create stress over something as stupid as parking. For a while, I treated Harold like weather. Something unpleasant, but manageable. If I saw him outside, I waved. He rarely waved back. If our trash cans rolled too far toward his side, I moved them. If guests came over, I asked them to park on the street. Then small things started happening. The first was a scratch along the passenger door of my car. It was thin and straight, about 8 inches long. I noticed it on a Saturday morning while wiping pollen off the windshield. I assumed a branch had done it, even though there were no branches near the driveway. 3 days later, our trash bin appeared on the porch. Not near the porch. On it. Someone had dragged it up 3 steps and left it directly in front of our door. Dana thought teenagers did it. We lived a block from the high school. That explanation made sense, and I wanted it to be true. The second note came 2 weeks later. Not 1 inch. That one was folded under my windshield wiper after a night of rain, so the ink bled through the paper. I took it inside and showed Dana. She stared at it for a long time, one hand resting on her stomach. "Do you think it's him?" she asked. I said, "Probably." She said, "Then talk to him." I did not want to. I was 32 years old, married, about to be a father, and still the thought of knocking on an angry old man's door made me feel like a kid returning a baseball that broke a window. But I did it. Harold opened before I finished knocking, like he had been waiting behind the door. "Did you leave this on my car?" I asked, holding up the note. He looked at it, then at me. "No." It was such a flat denial that I actually lost confidence for a second. "Okay," I said. "Well, someone did. Maybe park better." I was parked fine. His eyes sharpened. "You people always say that." I did not know who you people meant. Young people? New owners? Anyone who had ever lived beside him? I tried to keep my voice calm. "Harold, we are trying to be respectful. If there's an issue, just talk to us." He smiled in a way that was not friendly. I just did. After that, things escalated in a way that is hard to explain because every single incident sounded ridiculous on its own. Mud smeared on the driver's side handle. Our recycling bin tipped over only on our side. A pile of wet leaves pushed neatly against our garage door. Another scratch, this time on the bumper. One morning, I found a screw standing upright behind my rear tire. Not lying there. Standing upright in a little crack in the concrete, positioned like someone had placed it carefully. I started taking pictures. Dana told me to install a camera. I bought one online and put it in the front window, angled toward the driveway. That made me feel better for about 2 days. Then I checked the footage and realized the porch light reflected off the glass at night, making the whole driveway a gray blur. During the day, the camera worked fine. At night, it caught nothing useful except headlights and shadows. I adjusted it. Harold noticed. The next afternoon, he stood in the driveway staring up at our window for almost 5 minutes. I watched him from the kitchen without turning on the light. He was not doing anything illegal. He was just standing there. Somehow that felt worse. The worst part was how normal he seemed to everyone else. Our mail carrier chatted with him. The woman across the street brought him leftovers. When I once hinted to her that we were having driveway issues, she said, "Oh, Harold just likes his routine." Routine became the word everyone used to excuse him. By late summer, Dana was 8 months pregnant and getting nervous coming home after dark. She would call me from around the corner so I could watch from the porch while she parked. That is when I realized this had changed our life. Not in a dramatic way that would make people rush to help, but in the slow, grinding way that makes your own home feel borrowed. The rainy night happened in September. I remember because our son was due in 2 weeks, and Dana had finally fallen asleep after complaining about back pain all evening. Around 1:30 in the morning, I woke to a metallic scraping sound. At first, I thought it was the gutters. Rain was coming down hard, and wind rattled the windows. Then I heard it again. Slow, deliberate, metal against metal. I got out of bed carefully, so I would not wake Dana, and went downstairs. The front window was fogged at the edges. I wiped a circle with my sleeve and looked out. Harold was standing beside my car. He wore a dark raincoat with the hood up, but I knew it was him from the posture. Thin shoulders, head slightly forward, one hand resting on my car door. The other hand held something short and shiny. For a few seconds, I did nothing. I just watched, frozen in my own living room, barefoot on the cold floor. Then Harold turned his head. He saw me. That moment is the thumbnail in my mind. Rain silver in the porch light, my car between us, and Harold standing completely still with something in his hand, like he had been caught halfway through a thought. I reached for the wall switch and turned on every front light. He stepped back. I grabbed my phone and started recording. My hands were shaking so badly the video jumps all over the place, but you can see him standing there. You can see him look from me to the car, then down at his hand. He walks toward his house without rushing. He does not run. That almost made it more frightening. He looked insulted, not afraid. I wanted to go outside and confront him. I am glad I did not. Instead, I called the police. 2 officers came about 20 minutes later. Harold answered his door in pajamas, as if we had woken him from deep sleep. He told them he had not been outside. He said I was worked up and sensitive about parking. He said the object in his hand was probably a reflection. Then I showed them the video. The officer's expression changed just enough for me to notice. They looked at my car. There was a fresh scratch on the rear door, deep enough to show pale metal underneath. On the ground nearby was a small flathead screwdriver. Harold said it was not his. The officers could not prove it was, but they warned him clearly. They also told me to get an exterior camera and keep documenting everything. After that, Harold stopped damaging things. But he did not stop watching. He would stand at his kitchen window when Dana brought in groceries. He would come outside and sweep the same patch of driveway whenever we had visitors. When our son was born and we carried him inside for the first time, Harold stood on his porch and stared without saying congratulations. There were no more notes, no more scratches, no more screws. Some people might call that a victory. It did not feel like one. We lasted another 7 months. Then we sold the house for less than we wanted and moved to a place with a driveway so wide 2 cars can open their doors at the same time. I remember Dana crying the day we signed the papers, not because she was sad to leave, but because she had been holding her breath for almost a year. A couple asked us during the showing what the neighbors were like. I lied less than the previous owner had lied to me. I said, "The man next door is very particular about the driveway." I think about that sometimes and feel guilty. But I also know how these things sound until you live beside them. A scratch is just a scratch. A note is just a note. A man in the rain is just an old man with bad boundaries. Until the place you saved for years to buy becomes somewhere you check the window before turning off the lights. Story 8. The crying always started after midnight, and it always stopped the second I touched the wall. That is the part nobody believed at first. Not my husband, not the landlord, not even me really. I thought apartment walls played tricks. Pipes moaned. Televisions carried sound. People had babies and babies cried. There was nothing mysterious about it until there was. We lived on the 6th floor of a brick apartment building built in the 70s. It had beige hallways, humming fluorescent lights, and laundry machines in the basement that ate quarters and sometimes socks. Our unit was 6B. The unit next to us was 6C. I was working nights then as a hospital intake clerk, but my schedule rotated. Some weeks I got home at 7 in the morning. Other weeks I was home at night, trying to sleep like a normal person. My husband, Luis, taught middle school math and had the kind of steady routine I envied. He made coffee at 6:10 every morning and fell asleep during movies by 9:30. The first time I heard the child crying, I was alone. It was around 12:45 a.m. I was sitting on the couch folding laundry, still wearing my work badge because I always forgot to take it off. The sound came through the wall behind the bookshelf. Soft at first. A child sobbing, not a baby. Maybe 4 or 5 years old. Old enough to sound tired. I muted the TV. The crying continued. I remember feeling that uncomfortable responsibility you get when you hear distress through a wall. You are involved, but not invited. I stood near the bookshelf and listened. There were no adult voices. No footsteps. Just the child. After maybe 2 minutes, I put my palm against the wall. The crying stopped. Not faded. Stopped. I stood there with my hand flat against the paint, feeling foolish. After a while I went to bed and told myself the television next door had cut off. The second time Luis heard it too. He woke me around 1:20 and whispered, "Do you hear that?" I heard it before I opened my eyes. The same crying. Same wall. It had a rhythm to it, like the child was trying to catch breath between sobs. Luis got up and walked to the living room. I followed. He stood by the bookshelf and frowned. "Is there a kid next door?" he asked. "I don't know." That was the strange part. We almost never saw anyone go in or out of 6C. The name on the mailbox was D. Harlan. I had seen a man there twice. Tall, heavy-set, maybe mid-50s, with gray hair cut very short. He carried grocery bags in both hands and kept his eyes down. I had never seen a child. Luis knocked on the wall lightly. The crying stopped. He looked at me and tried to smile. "Okay, that's creepy." For the next few weeks, it became part of the apartment's nighttime routine. The elevator clanked. Someone on the 5th floor smoked by the stairwell. The radiator clicked. And somewhere after midnight, the child in 6C cried. Not every night. That was what kept me from doing something sooner. It happened just often enough to worry me, but not consistently enough that I felt certain. Sometimes it lasted 10 seconds. Sometimes 10 minutes. Once, I heard what sounded like a whispered please, and I sat upright in bed so fast I pulled a muscle in my neck. Luis wanted to call someone. I kept hesitating. I worried we were mishearing. I worried about causing trouble for a family already having a hard time. I worked in a hospital. I saw what happened when people judged situations from the outside with half the facts. Then one Saturday morning, I saw Mr. Harlan in the mailroom. He was sorting through envelopes with one hand while holding his phone in the other. I almost said something, but he looked so exhausted and ordinary that I lost my nerve. He glanced at me once, not rudely, just briefly, and went back to his mail. I noticed his shoes because they were bright red running shoes, weirdly cheerful with the rest of him. That night, the crying was louder. Luis stood in the living room, arms crossed, jaw tight. "That is a child," he said. "I don't care what anyone says." The next Monday, I called the landlord. Her name was Marcy, and she managed 3 buildings. She was efficient in the way people become when they spend years listening to tenants complain about plumbing. I explained what we had been hearing. There was a pause. "From 6C?" she asked. "Yes." Another pause. "That unit is rented by one person," she said. "A single parent?" "No, a single man." I felt my stomach drop in a slow, delayed way. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "No children listed. No other occupants approved." I asked if maybe he had family visiting. She said she would check, but her tone had changed from landlord tired to landlord careful. After that call, I started keeping a log. Dates, times, duration. It made me feel ridiculous and useful at the same time. Luis set his phone to record during one episode, but the sound was faint on playback. You could hear something like crying if you already knew what it was. Otherwise, it sounded like static and pipes. Marcy knocked on 6C 2 days later. I know because I watched through the peephole after hearing her voice in the hall. Mr. Harlan opened the door only wide enough to show half his body. He wore a brown cardigan and those red shoes. I could not hear everything. I heard Marcy say, complaint and noise. I heard him say, I live alone. Then he looked directly at our door. Not quickly, directly. That night, there was no crying. Or the next. 4 or 5 nights, silence. Luis said maybe the landlord visit fixed it. I wanted to believe that. I also felt ashamed, as if we had accused a lonely man of something awful because of bad insulation. Then, on the 6th night, I woke to the loudest crying yet. It was not muffled anymore. It sounded like a child was pressed against our shared wall. Sobbing hard. Panicked. Luis woke up too. He said my name, but I was already out of bed. Then came the thud. Heavy. Solid. Not like something dropped. Like a body or furniture hitting the floor. We stood still for 1 second, maybe 2, and then Luis grabbed his phone. I'm calling security, he said. Our building had a night security guard posted in the lobby because of a string of car break-ins. His name was Reggie, and he had once helped me carry a broken laundry basket upstairs. He came up in the elevator with Marcy on speakerphone. I waited in the hallway barefoot, shaking, while Luis stood between me and the door. Reggie knocked on 6C. No answer. He knocked louder. Building security. Open up. Behind the door, something clicked. Not the lock. A smaller sound. Electronic. The crying stopped. Reggie looked at us. Marcy told him over the phone that she was coming in, and that he had permission to enter if there was possible danger inside. He used the building master key. The door opened 2 inches and caught on a chain. For a moment, all I saw was darkness through the gap. Then Mr. Harlan's voice came from inside. What do you want? Reggie said, we had a report of a child crying and a loud impact. There is no child here. Then open the door. A long pause. The chain slid back. The apartment smelled stale, like old fabric and reheated food. Reggie told us to stay in the hall, but from where I stood I could see part of the living room. No toys. No shoes by the door except the red running shoes. No child. Marcy arrived 10 minutes later, hair wet from the rain, still in work clothes. She went inside with Reggie. Luis and I waited outside like guilty witnesses. Then Marcy called my name. Her face was pale in a way I had never seen. Can you show me where you hear it from? We walked into 6C. The layout mirrored ours. Where we had a bookshelf against the shared wall, Mr. Harlan had a tall cabinet. Marcy opened it. Inside were cleaning supplies, old newspapers, and a small black speaker tucked behind a stack of folded towels. It was facing the wall. Reggie found a phone connected to it by Bluetooth. On the phone were audio files. Not music. Recordings. Some labeled with dates. Some with names. Some just numbers. One file was still open. When Reggie tapped it, the crying started again. Hearing it from inside his apartment was worse than hearing it through the wall. It sounded fake and real at the same time, like someone had captured distress and turned it into a tool. Mr. Harlan stood by the kitchen with both hands at his sides. Marcy asked him, "Why would you do this?" He rubbed his face. "I couldn't sleep," he said. Nobody answered. He tried again. "It helped me deal with loneliness." That made no sense then, and it makes no sense now. I have known lonely people. I have been lonely. Lonely people call relatives, leave the TV on, talk to cashiers too long. They do not play recordings of a crying child into their neighbor's wall for weeks. The police came. They took statements and the phone. I do not know what they found beyond the recordings. Nobody ever told us. Mr. Harlan was not arrested that night, at least not in front of us. but he was evicted soon after. For a few days, his red shoes sat outside his door like he had stepped out of them and vanished. Then they were gone too. After he left, the apartment was cleaned, repainted, and rented to a young couple with a dog that barked at delivery drivers. I was grateful for that dog. Every normal sound felt like proof that the building had returned to itself. But I still think about the timing, how the crying stopped when I touched the wall, how it got louder after I complained, how the speaker had been aimed exactly at the spot behind our bookshelf, not randomly placed in the room. People ask what I think he wanted. I do not know. Attention, control, punishment. Maybe he liked knowing we were standing in our apartment, worried and helpless, listening to something he could start and stop with one finger. The landlord offered to let us move to another unit. We did. Same building, different floor. Some people thought that was dramatic. Maybe it was. But even now, years later, if I hear a child crying through a wall, I do not just wonder whether someone needs help. I wonder who wants me to hear it. Story 9. The hole in the fence was only the size of a quarter when I first noticed it, which is why I looked through it. I was 16 that summer, old enough to be left home alone, but young enough that adults still explained away things I knew were wrong. My parents both worked long hours. My mom managed a dentist's office, and my dad drove for a medical supply company. During the day, the house was mostly mine, and I liked that. We lived in a one-story house in a quiet neighborhood with maple trees and chain restaurants nearby. Our backyard was small but private, or at least I thought it was. A 6-foot wooden fence separated us from the house behind ours. I had never spent much time thinking about the people back there. I knew a couple lived there, older than my parents, and that their adult son had moved back in at some point. I saw him sometimes bringing trash bins to the curb. He was tall and pale, with a baseball cap pulled low. He never waved. The first time I saw the hole, I was kicking a soccer ball around by myself. It hit the fence and bounced back strangely. When I went to grab it, I noticed a dark spot between two boards near the ground. I crouched down. The wood around it looked splintered, like weather had opened it. I could see a sliver of the neighbor's yard, patchy grass, a plastic lawn chair, the bottom of a shed. I remember thinking it was kind of interesting, like a secret window. I did not tell anyone because there was nothing to tell. Fences got old. Wood cracked. A week later, the hole was bigger. Not a lot, maybe the size of a golf ball, but the edges were cleaner. That was the part one noticed without wanting to. It did not look like rot anymore. It looked scraped. I poked it with a stick and a little crescent of wood flaked off. That night at dinner, I mentioned it to my dad. He said, "I'll patch it this weekend." He did not. Not because he did not care, but because my dad's weekends were mostly catching up on everything he had been too tired to do during the week. The fence hole joined a long list that included the garage light, the loose bathroom tile, and the dishwasher that screamed during the rinse cycle. I forgot about it for a while. Then small things started missing. The first was a hand trowel my mom used for her tomato plants. She blamed herself, said she probably left it near the side gate. Then my old soccer ball disappeared. I had left it by the fence after practicing. I looked everywhere. Under the deck, behind the grill, in the bushes. Gone. The third thing was my shoes. That one bothered me more, because they were not garden tools or toys. They were my black canvas shoes, the ones I wore almost every day. I had taken them off on the back step after mowing, because they were covered in grass clippings. I went inside, showered, came back out an hour later, and they were gone. My mom said, "Maybe an animal dragged them." "What animal takes both shoes?" I asked. She gave me the tired look parents give when they do not have the energy for mysteries. "Raccoons are weird." I accepted that because arguing would make me sound dramatic. But the next afternoon, I found one shoe. It was sitting on the neighbor's side of the fence, visible through the hole. By then the hole was maybe 4 inches wide, big enough that if I crouched and tilted my head, I could see a small part of their yard. My shoe was near the plastic chair, placed upright, toe facing the fence. Not dropped, placed. I did not reach through. I do not know why. Something about the way it sat there made me feel like I was supposed to reach through. Instead, I took a picture with my phone. When my dad got home, I showed him. He stared at the photo for longer than I expected. "Why didn't you tell me it got that big?" he asked. "I did." He sighed, not at me exactly, more at himself. "I'll fix it tomorrow." That evening, he knocked on the neighbor's front door to ask about the shoe. I watched from our living room window, pretending to look at my phone. The older woman answered. She seemed confused but polite. After a minute, the adult son appeared behind her. Even from across the yard, I could tell he was looking past my dad toward our house. My dad came back with the shoe. He said the woman claimed their dog must have taken it. "They don't have a dog," I said. He looked at me. Apparently they do now. But I had never heard a bark. Never seen a bowl. Never seen a leash. I did not say that because my dad already looked uncomfortable. The next few days were normal in the way things get normal when everyone agrees not to discuss them. Then I started feeling watched in the backyard. I know how that sounds. I know teenagers say that when they get creeped out, but this was specific. It happened near the fence. I would be watering plants or tossing a ball against the garage, and suddenly my attention would snap to that low dark hole. Once I thought I saw movement, not through the hole exactly, but around it, a shadow passing on the other side. I stopped going out there in shorts. Then I stopped going out barefoot. Then I stopped going out without my phone. The climax happened on a humid Thursday evening in July. My parents were both late. A storm had passed earlier, and everything smelled like wet grass and hot wood. I went outside to bring in cushions from the patio chairs because another storm was coming. While I was stacking them, I noticed something white tucked near the fence. It was a folded piece of paper pushed halfway through the hole. At first, I thought maybe it was a note from the neighbors apologizing. That is how badly I wanted an ordinary explanation. I crouched down and pulled it out. It was a page torn from a spiral notebook. On it, someone had drawn our backyard. Not well, but accurately. The deck, the tomato plants, the grill, the back door, little squares for windows. There was an X near the fence where the hole was. In the corner, written in small block letters, were the words, "Best view." My body reacted before my brain did. I stood up so fast I got dizzy. Then, because fear makes people stupid, I bent down again. I wanted to see what was on the other side. I put one hand on the fence and lowered my face toward the hole. And I was already there. It filled the opening. Pale skin around it. Brown iris. Not blinking at first. Just waiting. So close that I could see individual lashes. I screamed and fell backward onto the wet grass. On the other side of the fence, someone moved fast. I heard footsteps, a plastic chair scraping, then the slam of their back door. I ran inside and locked the door. My hands shook so badly I called my mom 3 times before I could explain. She told me to stay inside and called my dad. He got home first, then my mom, then the police. By then, the neighbor's house was quiet. The officers took the notebook page seriously. I think the map helped. A hole in a fence could be anything. Missing shoes could be teenage carelessness. But a drawing of our yard labeled "Best View" made the situation harder to dismiss. My dad repaired the fence the next morning with a solid patch and extra boards. Then he installed a camera facing the backyard. For 2 nights, nothing happened. On the 3rd night, the camera caught him. The adult son came into view at 2:17 a.m. He moved along his side of the fence with a small flashlight pointed at the ground. He stopped where the hole had been and crouched. For almost a full minute, he leaned toward the patched boards, trying to see through a gap that no longer existed. Then he reached out and touched the wood. I have seen the footage maybe 10 times, and that part still makes my skin tighten. It was gentle, almost affectionate. The police went back. His parents apologized. The mother cried on our porch and said their son had issues and did not mean harm. She said he got fixated on things. She said he was lonely. She said he had never touched me, as if that was the line that mattered. My mom stood with one arm around my shoulders and said, "He watched my daughter." The woman had no answer for that. They moved him out a few weeks later. I do not know where he went. For the rest of that summer, His parents' yard stayed empty except for the plastic chair, which remained facing our fence until one day it was gone. People expected me to get over it once the hole was patched. I did not. I stopped sitting outside. I stopped practicing soccer in the yard. I kept curtains closed in rooms that faced the back. My parents offered to move, but I knew we could not afford it, and I said I was fine because I hated seeing how guilty they looked. Years later, I understand that the scariest part was not the eye. It was everything before it. The way small things disappeared, and adults kept making the world normal again with explanations that did not fit. Weather, animals, a dog nobody had seen, a lonely man with issues. The fence is probably gone now. The house was sold after I left for college. Maybe a new family lives there and lets their kids run around barefoot in the grass. I hope they fixed every board, because I learned that summer that privacy can disappear through an opening smaller than your hand. Story 10. Every night at 3:08, my neighbor's car rolled into the driveway, but the man stepping out was not my neighbor. I did not know that at first. For weeks, it was just a sound. Tires on gravel. Engine idling for a few seconds. Car door closing softly. 3 steps on the walkway. Front door opening. Silence. I noticed because I was awake anyway. At the time, I had a newborn daughter and a wife recovering from a rough delivery. Sleep in our house came in pieces. 20 minutes here, 40 there. I learned the nighttime sounds of our street better than I knew the daytime ones. The newspaper delivery at 4:40. The freight train around 2. The neighbor's sprinkler kicking on with a cough of pipes every other morning. And at 3:08, almost every night, the car. Our neighbor was a man named Ethan Cole. He lived alone in the small white house across from us, diagonal to our driveway. He was probably mid-30s, polite, quiet, the kind of neighbor who waved with 2 fingers from the steering wheel. He worked from home, I thought, because I saw him during the day often, taking trash out, getting mail, walking to the corner store in sweatpants. He did not look like someone keeping night shift hours. That was the first thing that made me pay attention. If you hear a car arrive at 3 in the morning, you assume someone is coming home from work. But Ethan was outside by 10 the next morning looking rested, drinking coffee on his porch, talking to the mail carrier like he had slept 8 hours. I mentioned it to my wife, Priya, one morning while warming a bottle. Maybe he has insomnia, she said. Insomnia with a commute? She gave me the look people give new parents when everyone is too tired for mysteries. Maybe he's seeing someone. That made sense. Private people have private lives. I let it go. Then one night, while standing in the kitchen with my daughter against my shoulder, I saw the car pull in. It was Ethan's blue sedan. Same dent near the rear wheel. Same faded bumper sticker from a local radio station. The headlights swept across our living room blinds and disappeared as the engine cut off. I shifted the baby and looked through the side window because I was already there. The driver got out. Something about the movement was wrong. Ethan walked casually, a little loose in the shoulders. This person moved stiffly, like they were trying to make as little noise as possible. They wore a dark hoodie with the hood up, head lowered. They closed the car door with 2 hands, easing it shut until it clicked. I could not see the face. At the time, I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was 3 in the morning. I was sleep deprived. Anyone looks strange under a porch light with a hood up. The person walked to Ethan's front door, unlocked it, and went inside. That last part mattered. They did not knock. They did not wait. They had a key. The next day, Ethan was outside watering one sad-looking plant by his steps. I almost said something. I even crossed the street with a trash bag, so I would have an excuse to pass him. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I said. "Late night." His hand paused on the hose. "What?" I immediately felt invasive. "Sorry," I said. "I thought I heard your car come in late. New baby. I hear everything now." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "Sometimes I go for drives." "For drives?" "Clears my head." That should have ended it. People drive at night. People do all kinds of things to clear their heads. But that night, at 3:08, the car returned again. Same careful door close. Same hooded figure. Same key. I started keeping track without admitting to myself that I was keeping track. I would note the time in my phone while pretending I was logging baby feedings. 3:08, 3:11, 3:06, once 2:59, which felt almost rude because I had begun expecting punctuality. The person always arrived in Ethan's car. Never left while I was watching. By morning, Ethan was there. I wondered if Ethan had a roommate he was hiding from the landlord. But he owned the house, as far as I knew. I wondered if it was a relative. A brother, maybe. Somebody embarrassed or troubled. That was the explanation I settled on, because it made the fewest demands on me. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I saw Ethan leave in the blue sedan at 1:15 p.m. I know the time because I was on the porch trying to get my daughter to nap, bouncing her in that desperate rhythm all parents discover. Ethan came out with a backpack, locked his door, and drove away. At 3:08 that night, the car came back. That is when I stopped thinking it was just a strange routine, because I had not seen the car return earlier. Our street was quiet, and I had been up almost the whole night with the baby. Maybe I missed it, but I did not think so. The sedan pulled into his driveway like it had been away all day. The hooded person got out. This time, they looked toward our house. I stepped back from the window too fast, knocking my elbow against the wall. My daughter startled and began to cry. I stood in the dark hallway, rocking her, heart beating hard, feeling absurd because someone across the street had looked in my direction. The next morning, Ethan's car was gone. I did not see him all day. That evening, around 6, he walked up the street from the bus stop carrying the same backpack. No car. I told Priya. She listened carefully this time. Then she asked, "Are you sure it's his car coming back?" "Yes." "Are you sure he knows?" That was the question that changed the shape of everything. I had assumed Ethan was involved because the person had a key. But what if he was not? What if someone had access to his car and house without permission? What if he was too embarrassed or scared to say anything? What if I had been watching a crime repeat itself every night and explaining it away as someone else's odd habit? That night, I set up my phone by the upstairs window and recorded from 2:55 onward. At 3:07, headlights appeared. The footage is grainy, but clear enough. Ethan's blue sedan pulls into the driveway. The driver sits there for 23 seconds after turning off the engine. Then the door opens. The person steps out wearing a dark hoodie, gloves, and light-colored shoes. They take keys from their pocket before reaching the door, which means they are not searching. They know exactly which key to use. Right before going inside, they look over their shoulder. For one frame, the porch light catches their face. It is not Ethan. It is an older man, maybe 50. He has a narrow face, a gray mustache, and a dark mark under one eye. I had never seen him before. Priya watched the video the next morning and said, "You need to show Ethan." I did not want to. I had barely spoken to the man beyond weather and trash pickup. Knocking on his door with secret footage of his house felt wrong, even though ignoring it felt worse. At noon, I crossed the street. Ethan opened the door before I knocked twice. He looked tired for the first time since I had known him. I told him I had recorded something strange. I apologized 3 times before showing him the video. He watched without speaking. When the older man's face appeared, Ethan's hand closed around the edge of the door. "Who is that?" I asked. He handed the phone back. "It's complicated," he said. That answer made every hair on my arms rise. "Is he supposed to be here?" Ethan looked past me toward the street. "You should delete that." I said, "I don't think I should." His expression changed. Not angry exactly. "More trapped." "Please," he said. "For your own sake, stay out of it." I went home and called the police. I still feel strange about that decision, because I do not know whether I helped or made something worse. 2 officers came that afternoon. They spoke to me first, watched the video, then crossed to Ethan's house. He let them in. They were inside for almost an hour. At one point, a second car pulled up. A woman in plain clothes got out, not a uniformed officer. She went inside too. Priya watched from our upstairs window while pretending not to. Around dusk, the older man appeared. Not from inside the house. From the detached garage behind it. He walked out with one officer on each side, not handcuffed at first. Then something happened near the driveway. I could not hear words, only raised voices. The older man pointed at Ethan. Ethan pointed back at the house. The woman in plain clothes stepped between them. Then the older man was cuffed. That should have been the end of it, but it was not. The police came back the next day. Then again 2 days later. Ethan stopped sitting on his porch. The blue sedan disappeared. For a while, a silver rental car sat in his driveway instead. I asked one of the officers if we were in danger. He said, "Not that we believe," which is the kind of answer that sounds official and means nothing. The story we eventually heard came in pieces from the woman across the street, from a neighborhood group chat, and once from Ethan himself when I caught him taking out trash at midnight. He said the older man was someone he had tried to help. Then he said the man had been staying there temporarily. Then he said he had not known the man was using the car every night. Then he said he had known, but only after it started. Every version contradicted the last. The garage had been set up like a room. Cot, heater, mini fridge, plastic drawers. That much I know because I saw items carried out later. The older man had apparently been entering the house after 3 to use the bathroom and kitchen. Why 3? Nobody explained. Why Ethan's car? Nobody explained that either. Why pretend? Why silence? Why the routine so precise it felt rehearsed? No answer. Within 2 weeks, Ethan moved out. He did it quietly, using a small moving company on a weekday morning. He came over before leaving and thanked me in a voice that sounded hollow. I asked if he was okay. He looked at our house, at the baby swing visible through the front window, and said, "You did the right thing, I think." Then he left. The house stayed empty for 3 months. During that time, every sound after midnight made me look outside. I hated that. I hated how quickly a quiet street could become a place of surveillance. I hated that my daughter's first months were mixed in my memory with headlights on blinds and a stranger's face in a porch light. A new family lives there now. They have 2 kids and a golden retriever that escapes constantly. Their car comes and goes at normal hours. Sometimes I still wake up around 3 for no reason and listen. No engine. No car door. No footsteps. Just silence. People assume silence means nothing is happening. I used to assume that too. Now I know silence can be part of the arrangement. And I never found out who the man in Ethan's car really was. Story 11. The first time she borrowed our trash can, she returned it cleaner than when she took it. That was what made me notice her. Not the borrowing. Neighbors borrow things. Ladders, salt, extension cords, parking spaces during parties. But a trash can is not something people usually wash before giving back. Her name was Lillian Graves, and she lived 2 doors down from us in a brick bungalow with white shutters and a porch swing nobody ever sat on. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, always wearing soft cardigans and garden gloves. She looked like the kind of woman who brought lemon bars to church events. My husband, Marcus, and I had moved into the neighborhood after years of renting. I worked as a dental hygienist for days a week, and Marcus managed inventory at a hardware store. We were not rich, but we were proud of that house. We painted the kitchen ourselves. We planted lavender by the walkway. We learned which floorboards squeaked and which windows stuck in humidity. The first trash can incident happened on a Monday evening. I came home and found our green municipal bin missing from the side of the garage. Trash pickup was Tuesday morning, so I assumed Marcus had rolled it to the curb early. Then Lillian knocked on our door around 8. "I hope you don't mind," she said, smiling apologetically. "My lid cracked, and I had a bit extra this week. I used yours for a few hours." Behind her, our trash can stood at the end of the driveway. Spotless. Actually clean. The outside had been wiped down. The lid had no dust. Even the wheels looked rinsed. I laughed because I did not know what else to do. "That's fine," I said. "You didn't have to clean it. I always return things better," she said. I thought that was charming. The next week, she asked first. She said the city had not replaced her crack bin yet. I told her it was okay. She used it and brought it back clean again. The third time, Marcus got annoyed. "It's a trash can," he said. "Why does she keep needing ours? Maybe she has a lot of trash. She lives alone." I shrugged. "Maybe she's cleaning out the basement." That became my explanation for everything. Basement. People have basements. Basements accumulate junk. Junk fills trash cans. But then I noticed she never put much at the curb. On pickup mornings, her own trash can sat out front with one bag inside. Ours, when she borrowed it, came back empty and washed before the truck arrived. That meant she was not using it for normal trash pickup. She was using it for something else. I did not say that to Marcus because I could already hear how it sounded. Then came the envelopes. One Thursday in October, I opened our mailbox and found a torn piece of mail addressed to someone named Aaron Pike. It had been ripped in half and folded small. Our address was nowhere on it. I assumed it had blown in from somewhere and tossed it into our kitchen trash. The next day, Lillian knocked. "Did you happen to receive anything that wasn't yours?" she asked. I said, "Like mail." Her smile stayed in place. Sometimes the carrier makes mistakes. I remembered the torn envelope, but suddenly did not want to mention it. "No," I said. "Not that I saw." She looked over my shoulder toward the kitchen. Just for a second. "Well," she said, "let me know." After she left, I took the envelope half out of the trash and looked closer. The return address was a law office in another county. The postmark was recent. Only the top half remained, but I could read part of one line through the window. Final notice regarding property claim. I searched Aaron Pike online and found almost nothing. A few old addresses. One social media profile with no photo. Then, buried in a county notice page, I found his name connected to Lillian's address. He had owned her house before her. That turned the envelope from random to uncomfortable. I told Marcus. He said, "Do not get involved." That was good advice, which I did not follow. The next time Lillian asked to borrow the trash can, I said yes, but I watched. She came after dark, wearing a raincoat though it was not raining. She rolled our bin down the driveway, past her house, and around the corner toward the alley behind the properties. I waited 5 minutes, then followed at a distance, feeling ridiculous in my own neighborhood. The alley ran behind the garages, lit by one weak street lamp. I saw Lillian standing beside our trash can with the lid open. She was feeding papers into it from a cardboard box, tearing some by hand before dropping them inside. Then she took out a spray bottle. She sprayed the inside of the bin. Not air freshener. Not cleaner. Something stronger. Even from half a yard away behind a fence, I caught a sharp chemical smell. She closed the lid and rolled the bin back toward our house. I hurried home through the side yard and got inside before she reached our driveway. 10 minutes later, she knocked and handed me a plate of cookies. "For the trouble," she said. I looked at those cookies and felt something in me go still. Marcus threw them away. The climax came because of a receipt. 2 nights later, I went to throw out a bag and found a strip of paper stuck under the trash can lid. It must have caught on a rough edge after Lillian cleaned it. I pulled it free. It was a receipt from a storage facility across town. The customer name was Aaron Pike. The date was that same week. I do not know why I kept it. Maybe because by then I wanted proof that I was not inventing a mystery out of a neighbor with odd habits. I put the receipt in a junk drawer. The next morning, Lillian came over before I left for work. Her face looked different without makeup. Older. Tighter. "I may have dropped something near your bin," she said. "A receipt." I felt my expression try to react, and I forced it not to. "I haven't seen anything." She stared at me. "It would be useless to anyone else." "Okay," I said. "I'll check later." She stepped closer. "It's important that private things stay private." That sentence landed like a warning wearing church clothes. I went to work shaken and distracted. During a cleaning, I sprayed water on a patient's cheek by accident and apologized so many times she asked if I was okay. When I got home, Marcus was standing in the driveway with 2 police officers. Lillian had called them. She told them we stole mail from her property and were harassing her. She claimed Marcus had gone through her trash. Marcus, who had spent the entire day at work and still had his name tag clipped to his shirt, looked too stunned to be angry. I invited the officers inside and showed them the torn envelope, the storage receipt, and the pictures I had taken of our clean trash because by then I had started documenting everything. One officer asked why I had not called earlier. I said honestly, because it sounded stupid. They went to speak with Lillian. That night, I watched from behind our bedroom curtains as the conversation on her porch changed. At first she was animated, pointing toward our house. Then one officer showed her something, maybe the receipt, maybe the envelope. She stopped moving. The next day, 2 unmarked cars parked outside her house. The official explanation never came to us. Not fully. But neighborhoods are terrible at keeping secrets and wonderful at making them worse. What we learned was that Aaron Pike had not been dead, as some people guessed. He was in a nursing facility after a stroke. Lillian had bought the house from a relative, but there was some dispute over belongings left behind, documents, maybe money. She had apparently been using our trash can to dispose of papers connected to him, because she thought anything in her own bin might be checked. Why clean ours afterward? I still do not know. Guilt. Control. Habit. Maybe she thought removing traces made the borrowing disappear. Lillian moved out before Christmas. Her nephew came with a truck and loaded boxes while she sat in the passenger seat of a sedan wearing sunglasses. She did not look at our house. A month later, Marcus replaced our trash can himself. The old one had nothing wrong with it. He just hated seeing it. I kept the storage receipt for a long time in the junk drawer, folded behind takeout menus and dead batteries. I do not know why. Maybe proof. Maybe a reminder. We still live in that house. Our new neighbors are friendly in normal ways. They wave. They borrow a rake and return it dirty. I like them for that, because now when someone returns something cleaner than they found it, I do not think they are considerate. I wonder what they washed away.